Hello, welcome to this video, and right now I'm going to do a presentations video about language. So before I start, I think language is something that we always use in our everyday life. From the moment we wake up to say hello to our family and to talk to our friends or maybe communicate with each other, we consistently using language. But do we actually know what the meanings of language itself? I don't think most of us can give the right definitions of that. So right now, let's dive into the simplest idea to learning it. And let me start first with the definitions of language. So what is language? So basically, language is a system of communications that use sounds, symbols, or gestures to convey meanings. It allows us to express our thoughts, ideas, and emotions and show it to other people. Language isn't just spoken. It can be written, signed, or even it can be using body, or we can call it as body language. Language itself is it can be same as a code. So imagine when we want to tell someone about tree, the word tree itself, it doesn't look or sounds like the actual tree, but because we agree of how to describe the thing itself and give them the name of the things as a tree, so we can share our ideas. So that's how language works actually. Other example is like the word dog. The word dog itself doesn't look or sounds like the actual dog, but because we've learned the code, the dog referred to the furry animals, and we understand each other's about that meanings. I think that's the way language works. So language is a system that we all agree upon, so we can share ideas to each others. Imagine if we are a painter, so we need a palette of color to express our feelings, to express a different kind of feelings. For example, red for love, or maybe blue for calms. And we as a painters have to use that kind of different color to express our thoughts, and that's how language also works. There are two types of language: linguistic and non-linguistic communications, and actually we communicate by both of them. And the definition of that, so linguistic communications is when we use spoken or written language. This is what we think as a language itself, which is we use spoken and written language. For example, if I say I'm very tired today, I don't want to go to work, and all of us or maybe other people will understand that I mean what I mean. Everyone will understand what I mean through the word that I speak. But non-linguistic communications is different. It's the way we communicate without words, through our facial expressions, gesture, body language, or even tones of voice. For example, like when our friends making a funny jokes, we laughing at it as a way we communicate with them. So basically, linguistic communications is communications that we do using language, but non-linguistic communications is a communications or language that we use without or a communications that we use without language. Example for non-linguistic communications is when I say I'm having a great times, but that's the linguistic communications, right? But I'm look upset and aren't dancing with my friends, so the actions that I where I'm upset is the non-linguistic communications, but the words that I say when I say I'm so having a great times, that's the linguistic communication. Next, let we discuss about double articulations. Language is special because it has what we call as double articulations. So it simply means that the language works in two levels. First, individual sounds or symbols, and second, the meaning that we create by combining them. So the first level is the basic sounds or letter. We call it as phonemes. For example, the word cat. It's made up of three sounds: K, A, and T. Each sound on its own doesn't mean much, but when we combine it together, it becomes a meaningful word. Now, because of that, we can picture the furry animal referring to cat. So right now we can picture the furry animal we're referring to is a cat. Let's look at another illustrations. Think of language as Lego bricks. Each small brick is like a sound or letters. By itself, it doesn't represent much, but when we snap the brick together, we can build something larger, like a car or house or two language. When we combine sound letter, we build words, and these words create meanings. So basically, double articulations is the smallest sounds that we combine it together to become a meaningful words. Next, let's discuss about the type of language. There are many different kind of the types of language, but most of us immediately think of a spoken language like French, Spanish, and Mandarin. But language can take many forms, not just a spoken language. So let's break it down into some of the points that we can see. First, we have spoken language. So spoken language is basically the language that we use every day. We use it, we speak it every day to show our feeling, emotions, and etc. To communicate with each other, also we're using the spoken language. But we also have written language, which is the visual representations of spoken language. Like when we read a book or send a text, we use a written language to share our thought. And next we have sign language. Are the language that use gesture, facial expressions, and hand movement to communicate. Every type of language has its own system or rule and structure. Here are fun facts. Did you know that sign language like ASL or American Sign Language have their own grammar rules, just like spoken language? They are not just gesture, but fully developed language with their own complexity. Next, language as a rule-governed system. One thing to remember is that language is a rule-governed system, but these rules aren't imposed by any authority figure. They're conventions that develop naturally within a language. For example, in English, we all agree that the word door refers to the object that opens and closes a room. In another language like French, it's called as porte. This rule allows us to combine words in meaningful way. Even though different languages have different rules, the structures of the language is universal. All languages have patterns and systems that allow us to communicate complex ideas. Language is made up of signs. These signs can be sounds, words, punctuation marks, or even silence. For example, the word goose is a sign. This letter represents sound, and together they form a word that refers to a type of bird. There are two types of language signs, which is arbitrary and iconic. Arbitrary signs have no inherent connections to what they represent. For instance, the word door doesn't look or sounds like a door. It's just a symbol we've agreed on so we can share our idea and understand each other. On the other hand, iconic signs resemble what they represent. For example, like the word bus that mimic the sounds they describe. There is a lot of words that using something or sounds the same as they describe. So when we're talking about language, I think it's not complete without sayings about first, second, and third language. So what is exactly that? First language is is a language that we learned first when we start to learning a language. Usually it's from our mother language, and or even our maybe like our village language and etc. And second language is the language that we use after the first language. If we in Indonesia, I think Indonesia is our second language. The first language is our mother language, which is if I am a Chinese, so I use Chinese language as my first language and Indonesian as my second language. And the third language is actually this language that I use right now, which is the foreign language. And I think that three of the language is totally important and connected with each other. Next, we have the essential elements of language. So language is a complex use for communications, and it made up of several core components. Here are the essential elements of language. First, we have phonology. Phonology refers to the study of sounds and how they are organized within a language. Every language has its own of phonemes, or we can call it as the small units of sounds that can or doesn't have any meanings. For example, the sound p in pet and b in bat represent different phonemes in English because changing the one sound changes the meanings of the words. For example, in English, the difference between the words cat and bat is a single word, which is k and b. And phonology also includes the rules about how sounds can combine and where they can occur in a word. Second, we have morphology, or we can call it as the word form, or we can call it as word formations. So morphology is the study of how words are formed and structured. It focuses on morphemes, the smallest units of meaning in a language. These are two types of morphemes. Free morpheme, which can stand alone, for example, like book, and bound morpheme, which must be attracted to another words, for example, like the prefix un in unhappy. Next, we have syntax. So syntax refers to the rules that govern how words are combined to form phrases and sentences. Different languages have different syntactic structure, but they all have rules that distract word order and sentence constructions. Next, we have semantics. Semantic is a study of meaning in language. It deals with how words, phrase, and sentence represent idea, objects, and events in the world. Semantic can explore word meanings, sentence. Next, we have pragmatics. So pragmatics is the study of how context influence the meanings of language. Its influence on how speakers use language in social interactions and how the meanings of the word can change based on the situation, tone, and relations between speakers. And the last is the lexicon. So lexicon refers to the vocabulary of a language. It's the set of all words and their meanings. A person's mental lexicons include the words they know and how they relate to one another. The lexicon is constantly evolving as new words are created and old words fall out of use. Next, let's discuss about the functions of language. So language does so much more than just helping us speak or write. It has many different functions, and we can dive them. And it have many different functions, and we can dive them into two main categories, which is the micro functions and the macro functions. Now, let's zoom into the micro functions of language. These are the small everyday use of language that play a big role from how to This play a big role in how we interact with the world. Let me break down for you. First, to release nervous or physical energy. Ever found yourself shouting at a sport games on TV even though the players can hear you? Or maybe you feel when someone startled you. This the physiological functions of language. It's not about communicating with others. It's about releasing pent up energy. When you shout, shoot the ball during the ball game. When you shout, shoot the ball to the players, even though the players can hear you during the games, you're not giving the real instruction. You're just realizing you just releasing your nervous energy. Second, for sociability, or we can call it as fatigue function. Next, we have the fatigue functions. This is when we use language just to be social. Things about small talk. When we say hello, how it's going, you're not necessarily looking for deep conversations, but you're acknowledging the other persons and maintaining a social connections. That's how the use of language in these fatigue functions. Next, to provide a record. So we're using the language to memorize something that we want to record in our mind. Do you ever find out that sometimes you're using language to things? I think not sometimes, but every time we things, we use language. And in these functions, it's help us to preserve our memory ideas and even important even for future generations. It helps us to remember and remember. The next function is to identify and classify things. Language used as a label to classify the world around us, from naming the objects or defining something abstract concept like freedom, happiness, and etc. We use in language. For example, for the word table, we use a language to identify it, how it looks, how it looks, and what the color is. That I think we use language to describe it. That's the functions of language in identify and classify things. Next, language as an instrument of thought. Language isn't just for communicating with others, it's also for communicating with ourselves. Think about how often you talk to yourself. Think about how often we talk to ourselves when we're solving our problems or making a decisions. This inner dialogue helps us reason, plan, and directly. So basically, we actually sometimes talk to ourselves using language. That's the use of language in this category. Next, to communicate ideas and feelings, or which is we can call it as communicating functions. This is the most obvious functions of language. We use it to express our thoughts, share ideas, request things, or give instructions. Whether we're asking for a favor or sharing a story, language is our primary tool for communicating with others. Finally, language can be a source of joy. Think about how much we enjoy poetry, music, or even a good jokes. The pleasure functions of language taps into appreciations of rhythms, themes, and sound. Its language at its more artistic. Next, we discuss about the macro functions of language. Right now let's jump into the macro function. So right now let's jump into the macro functions of language, or usually we call it as meta function. These are the larger purpose language serve in shaping our understanding of the world and our relationship with others. First, we have the additional function. The additional functions of language is about how we use it to represent and understand the world. By naming objects, describing experience, and sharing information, we use language to construct our reality. These functions allow us to build a mental map of the world around us and share the map with others. Next, while the additional functions help us understanding the world, the interpersonal functions help us build relationship. We use language to interact with others, express our identity, and form social bonds. Whether it's chatting with friends or introducing ourselves to others, we consistently using language. Next, we have photic functions. Don't let the name fool you. The photic function is just not about writing a phonics. It's about playing with language using its creativity. Whether through puns, metaphors, or catchy slogans, these functions allow us to experiment with language and find new ways to express meaning. One of the things that I know from this function is copywriting, which is we use language to in a more slogan way, or we use it in a more creative way to express or to promote something. And finally, the textual functions refer to our ability to create coherent text, whether it's a conversation, a story, or an essay. We don't just stringing random words together. The textual functions help us organize our thought into structured, meaningful communications. And one of the lessons that we learned with these functions is grammar. So we learn how the words should put together and the rules of that word. So, in conclusion, what is language? It's a powerful tool that help us communicate things and connect with the world. From micro functions that I have mentioned to macro functions like I have mentioned too, language is an essential part of being humans. Whether we're using it to express joy, solve problems, or even simply just to interact with others, language shapes everything we do. And I think that's all from me. Thank you for watching this video. Your inspirations was the best. Thank you so much.